Welcome to More Than a Conversation, the podcast where we meet and have discussions with some of the most interesting people and innovative leaders in their fields from all walks of life. We will be discussing everything from politics to theology to religion to philosophy to life. Every once in a while, I may just be on here talking about whatever's in the news and whatever I think will be of interest to you. This is your host, Patrick Conley, and I hope that today will be more than a conversation for you. Welcome to More Than a Conversation. This is Patrick Conley, and today I am joined by a very special guest. I'm joined today by Thom Rainer. Thom is the founder, the CEO, and the lead coach of Church Answers. Church Answers is an online community. It's a resource for church leaders. And prior to that, he served as the president and CEO of LifeWay Christian Resources. And before that, he served at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, where he was the founding dean there of the Billy Graham School of Missions and Evangelism. Now, I know I've got a lot of Clemson fans out there that are listening, so you have to let this next part slide, but he did graduate from Alabama before going on to Southern Baptist for his Master's of Divinity as well as his Ph.D. work. Most of you have heard of him through his writing, his books, his conferences he has done. Churches everywhere have been impacted by his work. And so I don't need to give him too much of an introduction. So we'll stop there and just say, Thom, thank you so much for coming on More Than a Conversation today.
Okay, but let's clear the air for those Clemson folks. First of all, I love Clemson. I'm a hardcore Alabama fan, but I love Clemson. One of the primary reasons is Dabo, of course, and his Bama origins, and the fact that he was on Gene Stalin's national championship team, which was the only non-Bear national championship team before Saban came along. But I love Clemson. There's only one school that I have any sense of rivalry for, and it's that I can't even say their name. That other school in Alabama.
that other school.
Yes, that is really more in West Georgia than it is in Alabama. But I love it when Clemson is a powerhouse just because I love Dabo. And so for all of those Clemson people who may have a disdain for Bama because of the rivalry, that's quite all right. But I have great appreciation for Clemson and the program that's going on there. And hey, who knows what's going to happen with South Carolina? At the point we're recording this podcast, they're looking for a coach.
Absolutely. I know my friends have all been letting everyone know that Dabo is not available, and we don't want to turn
Dabo's not going to South Carolina.
Well, I don't want to turn it into an ESPN podcast, but I will say this. There's one job that Dabo leaves Clemson for, and I don't think Saban's ready to give that one up yet, but that's my prediction. It's the only job he would leave for. That being said, Thom, quick question. Everybody is familiar with you and your work and your writing. They've read your books. So many churches. In fact, a lot of believers, a lot of people that are sitting on church pews, you have no idea. Go ask your pastor about Thom Rainer. Ask him what impact has been made in your church, and you would be surprised how many people you're sitting on the pew somewhere and your church has been impacted by his work. But before you were the Thom Rainer, on More Than a Conversation, we like to talk about origin stories. It's kind of our Marvel moment, if you will. Tell me a little bit. Tell us about Thom before he was Thom Rainer, before Alabama, before those things. Where do you hail from? What's the origin story?
Well, I hail from Alabama. I hail from a little town in South Alabama called Union Springs, and it's about 35 miles from that other school. And so I decided to drive 3 hours and go to Tuscaloosa for my undergraduate degree. After that, I went into the business world. I'm a fifth generation banker, and ironically, all three of my sons are sixth generation bankers, but they've all left banking to go into vocational ministry, just like I did. All four of us are finance majors, which was not planned. It's just how we are all wired. And so this sounds presumptuous, if not arrogance, but I was an up and coming young corporate banker that was the youngest VP ever in the banking system where I was. and thought that was my life path. And then God had other plans. Called me to vocational ministry, so I took off to get my training at seminary, and after that, pastored 4 churches. After pastoring 4 churches, I had the opportunity, thanks to the graciousness and love of my wife, to get my Ph.D. as one of the 2 degrees while I was at Southern. And so that gave me the opportunity to go into academia. And so I got to go to Southern Seminary to found one of their graduate schools that you mentioned. And I was there a dozen years, then 13 years in the corporate Christian world at LifeWay. And then basically, I got to tell you, I'm living my dream right now. And I guess in many ways, I've always lived my dream, but the opportunity to have my company that is, and again, boasting is not my intent, but we're currently touching 2 out of 3 Protestant churches in the United States and North America. In the United States, 350,000 churches, 250,000 roughly are coming to us for something. So that's the blessing I have. We're based in Franklin, Tennessee, south of Nashville, but only two of our team are in Franklin. The rest of them are virtual throughout North America.
Well, you guys were kind of ready for what was coming, and we were talking pre-podcast about you being an early adopter of Zoom. But Zoom, as we're talking right now, and as so many people are dealing with work, is just one thing that has changed. One thing of this landscape. For me, I know every generation has that moment where things change. For my generation, it was September 11th. I can tell you where I was. I can tell you what was going on, and the world changed. I don't know what travel is like pre-September 11th, but I know the things that happened after. I know what life looked like. I know how conversations changed and so on and so forth. And I think we've had another one of those moments, perhaps with COVID-19. And that's the big thing we want to talk about today, is just what the future looks like and what has changed. So starting off at that 30,000 foot height, what do you see on the landscape right now in the church world regarding COVID-19, 2020, the wild year it's been?
I love the fact that you're going back to historical punctiliar moments, and 9/11 is one of those. I'm very old, and so my first one was as an 8-year-old, November 1963, with the assassination of President Kennedy. That changed. And then there came Challenger. That was a marker for many. The explosion of Challenger was a marker for many people. For you, it was 9/11. COVID is going to be one of those markers, but there's a big difference. In each of those 3 moments, Kennedy's assassination, 9/11, explosion of the Challenger, they were singular moments. They happened, and we began to deal with them. COVID is not a singular moment. Most people do not even have clarity about when they really transition from a pre-COVID mindset to a post-COVID mindset. Some may remember when they went into quarantine. Some may remember some of the maybe with then President Trump announcing that all travel to China was barred. That may have triggered something, but very few people have that punctiliar, singular moment about COVID. And here's another difference. Those other 3, Challenger, 9/11, Kennedy's assassination, depending on how old you are and which generation you are, those 3 things sent people to church. The churches began to be flooded with people. With COVID, we've done just the opposite. It has taken people away from the church. So that's another 30,000 foot thing. Now here to me is probably as big of high level point as any of them. We do a lot of research at Church Answers. And one of the things that we do is we put data points out there of trends. This is where conversions are going. This is where attendance is going. This is where giving is going. And so we see the trends. Now, here's what happened. In 2020, all the trends that we were watching ended up being fulfilled for 2024. Now, what I mean by that is we have fast forwarded culturally and in church trends 4 years. It's like the timeline, there's just been a chasm ripped out of the timeline, and we're 4 years into the future about where we would have been on all the metrics that we think of commonly. That is so unsettling to most of us. Culture changes rapidly enough without COVID. We've had a 4-year rip of the timeline with COVID. That's the angst that many people are feeling as much as anything. We don't really understand that we're already far into the future because we weren't ready for it.
It's interesting you say that, because we know that catastrophe doesn't necessarily create the issues in an organization. Oftentimes it exacerbates or highlights where those issues can be. And seeing that, I've not heard anyone put it that way, jumping ahead 4 years. There are so many things culturally, governmentally, regulation-wise. There's so many things where we go, okay, we can see that coming. And suddenly we hit the accelerator. And that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about. Was Corona affecting the pace of change? Change is inevitable, but these moments force that change to happen. Is that something you're seeing at all heights?
Yeah, that again goes to that 4-year timeline. COVID has done two things. It has accelerated. So all change has been accelerated. Most change has been accelerated. And it has exacerbated the negative trends. So if a church had gradual attendance decline, all of a sudden it had rapid attendance decline. Many churches have yet to feel the financial pinch because of government funding that has happened with PPP at the business level, and then at the personal level, there's been at least one, and there'll probably be more injection of funds as well. So we haven't quite felt that, but we will. We will feel that as well. So what COVID is doing, it is accelerating and exacerbating. And we think that we're ready for this, but it is such a challenge because we were barely hanging on pre-COVID, we, the churches, we were barely hanging on pre-COVID in many of our churches with the pace of change. I wrote a book many, many years ago, way back in 1994, called Eating an Elephant. The thesis of the book is how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? How do you lead change in a church one small bite at a time, or one small step? That book is irrelevant now. You cannot lead incrementally anymore. If you lead incrementally, your church will begin to decline rapidly or even close. That's one of those trends we've seen too. Whereas we saw, and again, the numbers are imprecise because we don't have definitive reports, but we think around 8,000 churches were closing a year. Now we think it's 12 to 15,000 churches will be closing moving forward as a result of COVID.
Wow. And when we talk about that, let's hop into that point for just a moment. We talk about the idea of pace of change and how incremental change is not going to cut it. In fact, there was an article a week or two ago in the Harvard Business Review regarding the idea of change and how change was becoming, not only is it change being sped up, but it's also exponential. We're at a point now where our change is no longer slightly moving. I mean, if we're on the chart, we're going straight up. There is no more curve. So if that's where change is, and we talk about moving incrementally, churches are not nimble organizations. They are not. We've got committees. We've got committees to form committees. We have so many things that slow us down. And one concept of leadership that we hear, in fact, Jocko Willink, for example, the former Navy SEAL who does a lot of leadership things in the secular world, he talks about decentralized command and the necessity to delegate and so on and so forth. That's one way to do it. But how do churches deal with, and what's your advice when someone goes, hey, I'm a pastor. So when I go, Thom, what do I do? How do I implement change in what may be, outside of Congress, the least nimble organization on North American soil might be the church. So how do we do that?
Well, first of all, you are right to talk about the lack of nimbleness of local congregations. But let's look at it just a moment from the positive side. What is it about congregations positively that resist change? We hold on to the truth once and for all delivered to the saints. The word of God does not change. So that causes us to hold on there for good reasons. We hold on to the exclusivity of Christ. He is the only way of salvation, truth, and life. We hold on to that. We hold on to the truthfulness of all Scripture. So in one sense, we as organizations are that organism that holds on to the constants that will not change. So that is part of the positive. The problem with churches, and it has been pre-COVID for many, many years, is that we often associate those methodological and cultural things with those non-changeables as well. And so back in the early 80s, I mean, it's hard to believe it's been going on 40 years, we began to have worship wars. We had worship wars because we viewed a certain worship style as a doctrinal issue worth fighting for. And it was just a stylistic issue. So the first thing that a leader needs to do is to have clarity on the unchangeable and leading his congregation toward the changeable. So that's just a mindset issue. Don't just say everything's changing, say we know what is not changing, and from that we will move forward.
Hey, More Than a Conversation listeners, I hope that you are enjoying this conversation as much as I am, and I hope that you're getting something great out of it today. I'm just wanting to jump in here in the middle to take a moment and let you know a few ways that you can help out More Than a Conversation. First, wherever you're listening, please go ahead and click that subscribe button. That will definitely help, and that'll make sure that you get all the content. Also, if you have a way to rate, if your app allows you to give a 4-star, 5-star, whatever the rating is that's the top rating, I would so appreciate if you would go ahead and drop a rating there. That's how the aggregators and the distributors rank podcasts, and the higher the ranking you give, the more ears will be able to hear these great conversations. Thanks again, and I'm hoping that today has been more than a conversation for you. Now let's get back to it.
A second thing a leader needs to do, and this is one of the more painful things, is to be willing to accept losses. I hate for any church leader, hates it, and I do too, when a church member says, I'm not going to take this anymore, I'm going to leave. You want to minister to them, you want to pray for them, but you don't want to give them so much attention that you're holding on to the negative and holding back those who are ready to move forward. Letting go of people is one of the big challenges that a number of pastors have to go through. Okay, what else? Another one is the church leader has to be ready to let go more than he ever has. And so, if you're listening to Paul saying you got to equip the saints to do the work of ministry, you've got to take that as more than just a memory verse. You have to take that into reality. And quite frankly, that's one of the directions that Church Answers is heading, is working with pastors to help them accelerate that in healthy ways. And that's another topic for another time. And then when it is all said and done, the decentralization issue is not just delegation, but it's also the decentralization of a location. Mega churches, for years and years, mega churches aren't our primary constituency, but mega churches for many, many years knew that if they did not decentralize their campuses through the multi-movement, multi-site, multi-campus, multi-venue, that they were going to decline. And so when you look at the top 100 churches in America today, either in terms of size or in terms of growth, usually around 99 of them are multi. That movement now is moving to the smaller churches. And what I think that we will be seeing, and it will be hard for many leaders to even put their minds around this, we are headed toward a micro movement where there will be extremely small congregations, 20, 15 people, not necessarily a house church, but a small congregation where there is what we would really call in today's vernacular, a site pastor or a campus pastor, usually unpaid, definitely bivocational. And I'm watching churches of 100 begin to open up some micro congregations, because that is the direction that we're headed generationally. Millennials, particularly younger millennials, and then Gen Z are going to be moving to these micro or smaller congregations. Watch that happen. That'll be a part of the decentralization. Now, those are 4 big things that I've just told leaders, and they're massive in scope, and you don't do them overnight. It's easy for Rainer to get on a podcast and say you should do these things. It's another thing to implement them, but it's coming. So get ready for it, and instead of resisting it, be in front of it and lead it.
So we should be looking for opportunities to see these things coming, particularly as we understand that not only is society changing through events that have been forced upon us, but we're changing through generational change and so on and so forth. I do think that a positive of seeing more small groups or perhaps micro churches or however that ends up playing out, a positive may be the ability to develop disciples to a level that really our nation is crying out for, that the church is crying out for, to develop people with a biblical worldview. I saw yesterday, and I don't know how this plays into this, but I can just see the discipleship. But yesterday, I was traveling with my wife and kids. We do, my daughter's school is closed every Monday, so we do a family day. And I came behind a vehicle, and on the back of the vehicle, it had 3 bumper stickers, one of which was for its political candidate of choice, another of which was in support of a non-biblical lifestyle, another of which was of a local mega church. And I thought to myself, what a message. What a message.
It's a mixed message, that is for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And right now we're seeing so many people come from so many different avenues. And I think perhaps it is that detached feeling that we have gotten when worship is an event that we attend and we're not getting that deep discipleship, or we have a lot of people who are quote unquote believers, but do not have a biblical worldview. And that is impacting us on every level. And COVID may be a blessing in disguise in that area. That's an opportunity for us to begin to engage on that smaller level. Another question that I wanted to ask you as we get into the concept of what change looks like. It seems like over the years, you mentioned mega churches and perhaps going more towards a micro church movement, things like that. There was a time where churches were I'm in the Carolinas. I'll use that as an example. In the Carolinas, we had what were called mill hills. And mill hills were basically an area where there was a textile mill and then the community that surrounded it. And those homes were all typically pretty cookie cutter, same size, small homes. They were for the workers. And then churches popped up. Every mill hill had a church, and it might have a church of various denominations and so on and so forth. But over time, the churches grew, the churches became established. The church I pastor is a 105-year-old church, for example. The churches were there. The community that came to that church, the mill closed, the people moved, new people came, so on and so forth. And suddenly our churches became destinations. And people are driving past the community to get to the church. What's the future look like there? How do we engage the community, the neighborhood? COVID seems like it's made our world smaller. We see our neighbors more because we've been locked into the house. We've been in the yard, so on and so forth. Is there a shift coming, or is there a needed shift to see that neighborhood connection again?
Prior to COVID, the neighborhood church was an incipient movement. We were watching it. We have been watching it. And even though it was early in its momentum, it was still in a momentum stage. What is going to happen with COVID is the neighborhood church is going to accelerate. It may be its own church, like a revitalized neighborhood church. It may become a adopted church of another church, or it may become a micro church. But the idea of having a church as a gospel presence in a neighborhood, I think is very, very close to the biblical form. When they started the church at Philippi, when they started the church with all of its problems at Corinth, those churches had a definitive locality, not necessarily a neighborhood, but they were certainly identified with a very tight geographical area. I think that is where we are headed now, because that's where we were headed. And remember, what COVID does is accelerate and exacerbate the trend of neighborhood churches that will blend with the trend of micro churches, depending on how large the neighborhood is something that you will be seeing. Now, here's the challenge. Let's suppose that you were a neighborhood church, like you say, a mill church, very familiar with the mill churches or the manufacturing churches, or those that were built around a major employer whose homes were then associated with those employees. But let's look at the former mill church. That church has no longer an identity of the employer, because many of them have closed down, are not as big as they once were. And so the people who come to that church don't have that neighborhood identity, because they don't have that employer identity. That those churches, or any church that is in a neighborhood that needs to revitalize, that is where the greatest challenge is going to come. because those churches have been more insulated than Great Commission focused to their neighborhood. Those churches are the ones that will be the best for the kingdom because they're already there, they're already a presence. And so that's going to be the challenge. Can those established churches that are in a neighborhood but have not been that relevant to their neighborhood really begin to revitalize and reach out with those who are closest to them?
And it seems like that should certainly be something that is deeper in our mindset than the idea of, again, a destination church that just does an outreach activity for every once in a while. But getting back into that DNA of the neighborhood church, certainly something I think that we're going to see in the future. And I think it's something I welcome anyway. We'll put it that way. Talking of the changes, we've gathered differently. Very differently. We've gone online. Now, most churches are fluid. Sometimes there may be some sickness. There may be something happens in their area. They're coming off they're going to online gathering again during that time. Then they may come back and gather in-house. There's churches that are doing mixes. There are churches that were online that now aren't. We are gathering very much more digitally. I know that you've made some statements about the churches that were gathering again and the growth that they were seeing. I want to talk about that, but before we talk about the churches that are gathering, I want to ask you, what have we lost by not gathering? And so maybe this isn't just the church growth Thom Rainer question, but maybe this is the seminarian or the pastor. What are we losing? We go back to the postman who wrote about in the book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, the danger of trying to digitalize our worship experience. And he was a secular author, and he talked about the danger of that and how we were losing the sacredness of it with television preaching. The book's 30 years old. That being said, what do you feel like we've lost, or have we lost anything by going digital only?
Well, we have the potential to lose, and some of us have lost it. It is hard for me to conceive of true community to be digital. There will be some. My good friend Carrie Newhoff believes that community can be just as digital as in person. I feel like in person is going to be the community of the future. So I don't see any type of trend where in person is going to go away. I think it is going to be the ultimate form of community. So what we have lost is that sense of community. I am in a community group. In fact, I'm one of the leaders in my community group, the equivalent of a small group or a Sunday school class, but it's a community group. We, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, but to my knowledge, my group is the only group that is still meeting digitally. And one of the reasons is my son Jess is my pastor. It's a relatively young church, a new church, but it's also young in age. So those in my group, we're not age graded, but we have primarily attracted some of the older people who have a little bit more of susceptibility, if not fear, about COVID, and it's spiking again in our area. So we're digital. But I can tell you that within our group, and I hear this within others, we can't wait till we're back together again. We see each other. We all know how to work Zoom. We all know how to interact on Zoom. But we are looking forward to the time that we can get back together. Our church is regathered, but at least our group has not regathered. And I'm hearing that again and again. The in-person physical gathered church is not going to go away. As a matter of fact, it may be one of the blessings that will take place, because the world will know that there's a gathering spot of people who will care and love. Now, having said that, to neglect the doors that God has opened with the digital world would be tantamount to disobedience. One of the great manifestations of innovation took place 2 centuries before the birth of Christ, going into the 1st century of AD. And it was the Roman roads. It was an incredible technological marvel. Roads were built through wooded areas where you couldn't travel. Roads were built with culverts so the drainage could take place, and wet weather or snowy weather would not deter you. Roads were built over waterways and bridges that had never been built before. It was a technological marvel, and it was built primarily for control and warfare by the Roman Empire. I mean, when you read about the person on the side of the road in the parable of the Good Samaritan, you're looking at something bad that was happening on a Roman road. But here's the thing about it. It was the primary conduit for the gospel to travel. Yeah, they got on boats at times, but primarily they went down the Roman roads. They used that secular innovation for the glory of God. We have our own Roman roads today, and it's the internet and it's digital services. And it is being perfected to a point now where we will soon have enough satellites in the sky with Bezos, with my mind's going blank, Tesla, you know what I'm talking about. Elon Musk. Yeah. They're putting enough satellites up there where we're going to have satellites all over the world where even some of the most deprived communities and global community will have internet. So don't neglect the digital world. Don't neglect the digital world. The digital world is a perfect conduit to minister to people, one, but it's also a perfect conduit to bring people to the in-person church, especially if those who are watching include people in your community. What we're encouraging churches to do is to give those who are watching digital services or an opportunity to come to a digital Bible study. Have someone that opens up a digital Bible study. As you get to know them on Zoom, or there'll be a few other delivery systems other than Zoom, but as you get to know them, invite them when the time is right, especially the gathered time is right, to a gathered service. And in essence, it becomes a pathway to move people in the community from digital to in person. And you can certainly be ministering to them and praying for them. Digital is not a tool. Digital is a mission field. And we need to look at it that way. And when we do, we'll see God open all kinds of doors.
Digital is not a tool. Digital is a mission field. What a statement, and something that we should definitely be looking to identify with more and more and more. You know, it's interesting, too, as you talk about people gathering and the possibility of loss and so on and so forth, of that idea of community. You know, our church has been blessed to be able to begin to gather again. We were shut down for about 6 weeks. We've been blessed to be able to do that. Talking to a lot of my colleagues, it seems like the churches that have gathered have said that their services are invigorated, their people are excited to be there, and we're seeing new faces. I know our church is. We're seeing new people show up, seeing new people come in, seeing people that are excited about an opportunity to gather. I also have a large group of people who are fearful, whether they be at risk or they be caretakers, so on and so forth, that haven't regathered, but we've seen a lot of people that are coming in. We've seen that gathering happen. Are churches growing through the midst of COVID and through regathering?
It's rare. Now, it depends on how you define growth. If you define growth by absolute attendance numbers, no. Sure. We've done tons of those surveys, and fewer than 5% would say that in fact, it's more like 2%, would say that their post-COVID attendance is bigger than their pre-COVID. So if you use that as your metric, it is no. If you use the metric new people coming in, yes, many churches are experiencing an influx of people who are excited about a church that is open and they want to gather with her. I think that it will take churches that are Great Commission minded about 3 years to get back to where they were pre-COVID. That sounds disconcerting, but at least I think they're headed in that direction. That presumes that they're Great Commission mind. So when you ask if they're growing, not in absolute attendance, those are the outliers, but in terms of new people coming in, yes, I'm hearing that quite often. The church today has an opportunity for a blank slate. It is an open door. It's if you read the book of Acts, there are all types of open door moments. And if the church had not walked through it, such in Acts 6, when they were overlooking the Grecian widows and the distribution of food, if they had succumbed to the tension that was there and the division that was there and just done that, instead of, what did they do? They began to equip others to do the work of ministry. They appointed 7 to take care of the widows. And then what did they do? We will turn our attention to prayer and ministry of the word. And then in Acts 6-7, 3 things happened. The word of God began to spread. They began to reach more people with the gospel. And don't miss that last portion of Acts 6-7. Even some of the priests were reached with the faith, those that were hardest to reach. We're having those open door moments right now. You better walk through them instead of hoping that 2019 or before will be coming back.
Amen. Open doors. What a great place to come to a conclusion. I know that you've got probably a book or two to write. You're probably working on one. I don't know. You've got so many things happening over there. I don't want to take any more of your time. We're so glad you came. By the way, guys, there is a book that you need to get from Thom Rainer. It's called The Post-Quarantine Church. I cannot imagine the work that had to go in to get this out as quickly as he has gotten it out. It is available. You can find it on Amazon. It is a Church Answers resource, but this book, The Post-Quarantine Church, is going to answer a lot of questions. Today, we had 30 minutes to go into of some very deep areas that we could not explore to the fullness of what you're going to want to hear. So check out The Post-Quarantine Church. Also, Thom, if folks want to follow you, if they want, I know I get emails from you all the time. So if folks want to follow you, if they want to get those emails, if they want to learn more, where can they follow Thom Rainer? Where can they get more information about yourself and about Church Answers?
Simply go to churchanswers.com and there's a place to sign up. 97% of our resources are free. So if you go there, you're going to get a ton of information. In fact, you're going to get tired of my emails because I'm going to be sending them to you once, sometimes even twice a day, but we're just pouring information out. We're primarily a content provider. That content primarily is free. So you can go to churchanswers.com. I will mention the community we have. The community that is actually a paid community is the largest ongoing gathering of church leaders in North America, maybe the world, but definitely in North America. And it's a place where if you ask a question, you're going to get a response within an hour or two. We call it your church coach and your church consultant on your smartphone. And it's $9.97 a month. I don't usually mention prices, but I don't want to be salesy without letting you say that we've tried to make this affordable for everyone. So there's an opportunity to sign up for Church Answers and be a part of that community as well. If you choose not to sign up for the $9.97 a month, you're still going to get 98% of our material absolutely free. And that's the ministry that we want to have, because Church Answers is there to work with and for churches and church leaders, to both of them to a greater help. So that's what we're there for. That's our mission. That's our ministry. And it's our passion.
Thanks again, Thom. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Been great to be with you.
And for everyone else, we hope that today has been more than a conversation for you, and get over to Church Answers and check out those resources. Thanks again for being part of More Than a Conversation today. If you'd like more content like this, check out my blog at www.pastorconley.com. That's PastorConley.com. Again, that's PastorConley.com. I'd also love to see you join us in worship at Garden Sanctuary. If you're ever in Rock Hill, South Carolina, or the greater Charlotte area, we'd love to have you stop by and worship with us. Check us out at www.gardensanctuary.org. That's gardensanctuary.org. Until next time, I hope this has been more than a conversation.